can go ahead and turn to 1 Samuel chapter 13. You know, obviously with the time of year we're in, everyone's mind is on Christmas. It's kind of hard to avoid all that stuff, especially like with me working in retail. It hit you in the face every day. And I didn't want to necessarily talk about Christmas in general today, but you know, things that people say in defense of Christmas get me really riled up. Sometimes I have to kind of be careful and pace myself. Sandy and Shane sent me a video the other day, and they're like, "Did you watch it? Did you watch it?" And I was like, "I gotta, like, one day at a time so that I don't freak out on Liz." Now she can tell you, you know, pacing around the house, riled up talking about this stuff. And I'm an admin on our church YouTube page, so I see the comments that people leave, and there's always an uptick this time of year on our Christmas program, YouTube, video where people, going back and forth about all kinds of nonsense. And you see some really ridiculous and mostly just dishonest things that people will say in defense of. And a lot of what I see on there, because that program is, it's not completely extensive, but there's enough there to where it's hard to deny a lot of it, to say, well, that's not really where that came from. It's pretty clear that it is, and all the historical examples that are given throughout that program. So people resort to, well, it doesn't really matter. And so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. And again, not about Christmas in general, but just why it matters how you worship and what you do. People just assume that somehow it doesn't matter. Whatever you feel in your heart, that's what's right. But we have example after example of how that's not the case. So we're going to look at just a few. The Bible says that there's a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. And people that seems to be lost on a lot of people. Let's go to verse 5 of 1 Samuel chapter 13. And the Philistines mustered to fight with Israel, 30,000 chariots and 6,000 horsemen and troops like the sand on the seashore in multitude. They came up and encamped at Michmash to the east of Bethaven. When the men of Israel saw that they were in trouble, for the people were hard pressed, the people hid themselves in caves and in holes, and in rocks and in tombs and in cisterns. And some Hebrews crossed the fords of the Jordan to the land of Gad and Gilead. Saul was still at Gilgal, and all the people followed him trembling. He waited 7 days, the time appointed by Samuel, but Samuel did not come to Gilgal, and the people were scattering from him. So Saul said, "Bring the burnt offering here to me, and the peace offerings." And he offered the burnt offering. As soon as he had finished offering the burnt offering, behold, Samuel came. And Saul went out to meet him and greet him. Samuel said, "What have you done?" And Saul said, "When I saw that the people were scattering from me, and that you did not come within the days appointed, and that the Philistines had mustered at Michmash, I said, now the Philistines will come down against me at Gilgal, and I have not sought the favor of the Lord. So I forced myself and offered the burnt offering. And Samuel said to Saul, you have done foolishly. You have not kept the command of the Lord your God, with which he commanded you. For then the Lord would have established your kingdom over Israel forever." So through that, and the rest of the examples we're going to look at are similar. This isn't malicious on Saul's part, like I just wanted to disobey God. He even said here, like, I figured I didn't, seek the favor of the Lord yet, so I better do it, and you didn't show up when you said you were going to. So everything seemed like it was right. That reasoning works. But in the end, we see what Samuel said. It wasn't just a small thing. I was like, well, do better next time. That was a major thing where God said, I would have done this, but because you didn't listen, I'm going to do something different. And I think we're going to head over to chapter 15, which is another example with Saul with kind of the same consequences. Chapter 15, verse 10. The word of the Lord came to Samuel. I regret that I have made Saul king, for he has turned back from following me and has not performed my commandments. And Samuel was angry, and he cried to the Lord all night. Let me see if I'm in the right place. Yeah, okay. for he has turned back from following me and has not performed my commandments." And Samuel was angry, and he cried to the Lord all night. And Samuel rose early to meet Saul in the morning. And it was told Samuel, "Saul came to Carmel, and behold, he set up a monument for himself, and turned and passed on and went down to Gilgal. And Samuel came to Saul, and Saul said to him, 'Blessed be you to the Lord, I have performed the commandment of the Lord.' And Samuel said, 'What then is this bleating of sheep in my ears, and the lowing of the oxen that I hear?' Saul said, 'They have brought them from the Amalekites, for the people spared the best of the sheep and of the oxen to sacrifice to the Lord your God, and the rest we have devoted to destruction.' Then Samuel said to Saul, 'Stop, I will tell you what the Lord has said to me this night.' And he said to him, 'Speak.' And Samuel said, 'Though you are little in your own eyes, are you not the head of the tribes of Israel? The Lord anointed you king over Israel, and the Lord sent you on a mission and said, Go devote to destruction the sinners, the Amalekites, and fight against them until they are consumed. Why then did you not obey the voice of the Lord? Why did you pounce on the spoil and do what was evil in the sight of the Lord?' And Saul said to Samuel, 'I have obeyed the voice of the Lord. I have gone on the mission on which the Lord sent me. I have brought Agag, the king of Amalek, and I have devoted the Amalekites to destruction. But the people took of the spoil, sheep and oxen, the best of the things devoted to destruction, to sacrifice to the Lord your God in Gilgal.' And Samuel said, Has the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to listen than the fat of rams. For rebellion is a sin of divination, and presumption is as iniquity and idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has also rejected you from being king." So twice there, Saul says, "Well, we did this for you." It seemed on the surface like that seems like an extremely reasonable thing. Like, well, yeah, I know that's what you said, but we kept the very best so that we could sacrifice it to you. We thought that part would please you. So again, and I like how he pinned it on the rest of the people the second time around. It reminds me of Aaron. Like, they gave me the jewelry, I threw it in, and calf came out. It's like on second thought, he better distance himself. But still, like, it seemed like on the surface again, and that with the same reasoning people use to defend anything that they do that's not pleasing to God, there's often a reasoning why it is to them. But we see what the Lord said through Samuel about what Saul did, and it was, short of God striking him dead right then, there's nothing more serious that God could have said to him. And all he did was keep back something to offer to God, so to speak. Turn to Exodus chapter 32, and this is, of course, one that we know well. We'll begin in verse 1. When the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people gathered themselves together to Aaron and said to him, "Up, make us gods who shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us up from the land of Egypt, we did not know what has become of him." So Aaron said to them, "Take off the rings of gold that are in the ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, and bring them here to me." So all the people took off the rings of gold that were in their ears and brought them to Aaron. And he received the gold from their hand and fashioned it with a graving tool and made a golden calf. And they said, "These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt." When Aaron saw this, he built an altar before it. And Aaron made proclamation and said, "Tomorrow shall be a feast to the Lord." And they rose up early the next day and offered burnt offerings and brought peace offerings. And the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. And the Lord said to Moses, "Go down, for your people whom you brought up out of the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves. They have turned aside quickly out of the way I commanded them. They have made for themselves a golden calf and have worshipped it and sacrificed to it and said, 'These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt.'" And we're going to jump down here to verse 25. And when Moses saw that the people had broken loose, for Aaron had let them break loose, to the derision of their enemies, then Moses stood in the gate of the camp and said, "Who is on the Lord's side? Come to me." And all the sons of Levi gathered around him. And he said to them, "Thus says the Lord your God of Israel, put your sword on your side, each of you, and go to and fro from the gate throughout the camp, and each of you kill his brother and his companion and his neighbor." And the sons of Levi did according to the word of Moses. And that day about 3,000 men of the people fell. And Moses said, "Today you have been ordained for the service of the Lord, each one at the cost of his son and of his brother, so that he might bestow a blessing upon you this day." So we went from tomorrow shall be a feast of the Lord to a few verses down, the instruction to take your sword and kill your brother and your companion and your neighbor. And that was all because they didn't do things the way that God said to do them. It mattered to God, clearly. I mean, thousands of people died because it mattered. You know, you can't treat the holy or a holy God however you want. He's not a Mr. Potato Head that you can pull parts off and add other parts to make him look the way that you want. And we're going to conclude in Ephesians chapter 5. I'll begin in verse 6. "Let no one deceive you with empty words, for because of these things the wrath of God comes upon the sons of disobedience. Therefore do not associate with them. For at one time you were darkness, but now you are light in the world. Walk as children of light. For the fruit of light is found in all that is good and right and true. And try to discern what is pleasing to the Lord. Take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. For it is shameful even to speak of the things they do in secret. But when anything is exposed by the light, it becomes visible. For anything that becomes visible is light. Therefore it says, 'Awake, O sleeper, and arise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you.' Look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of the time, because the days are evil. Therefore do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is.